Hello, everybody. Thank you again for being here. My name is Mike Craig. I am the host of Past the Tots, the podcast that brings commercial, non-commercial food service to you, hoping to be just a great time in your workday. Thank you for joining us today. I am so happy. Today we have Robin Safley. Robin is the executive director of Feeding Florida, basically every food bank in the state of Florida. And Robin runs the show. Robin, how are you today?
I am so good and it's so exciting to be here. What an incredible opportunity.
Yeah, just love the energy in the conversation. I think this is going to truly be just a great conversation to have. In order to kind of get there, Robin, I know somewhat about you. Now, you're a high-powered attorney, so walk me through your background and the evolution that leads you to today leading food banks in Florida.
Well, gosh, I'll give you the short version, but obviously I graduated from law school at FSU. Got to give them a shout out. And I really my career took. I was in private practice for a small amount of time, and then it went sort of in the political realm. And so, pretty early on, I was general counsel to the minority leader Andrew Crenshaw, who later became a congressman. And then I moved in and became chief of staff to the Senate president in 1994, and then later chief of staff to the Commissioner of Education. And then I really took about 9 years out of government. My children were in middle school. I really wanted to be with them more, so I did consulting work. And then, lo and behold, in 2011, I got a call from then Adam Putnam, who is our Commissioner of Agriculture, and he said, "Hey, I'm going to move the child nutrition programs, which are school lunch and breakfast and summer feeding, over to Department of Children Education to Ag. Would you be willing to come back in and handle that transfer? Because it's $1 billion program." And we had certain approvals that had to be done by the USDA. And I said, well, my kids are in college. I think that would be fun. I've always loved nutrition. I've been in the health sort of consulting world for a while. So I came in and did it. And obviously, when I was there, we had the new meal pattern. I mean,
Yeah.
that was the first thing out of the box. And some of the other things that came from the 2010 Child Nutrition Reauthorization Act.
Right.
And I just fell in love with the topic and then realized that these were all tools to really mitigate hunger in our society. And so then I became very curious of how that melded. And so I did that for 5 or 6 years. And then the opportunity came to be the executive director of Feeding Florida. And I thought this would be a really neat way to see the another side of hunger. So I did, if you think about it, I did institutional feeding, right? But I
Yeah.
wanted to see what the charitable world looked like. And so I've been doing this for 6 years, and it just really is a passion to try to figure out how to put all these pieces together for the
Yeah.
families.
So someone who's been on the institutional side of food service, right? What does that other perspective, the charitable side, look like as you've spent time there? What would you teach us and tell us about that side?
Yeah. Well, what's really fascinating, and I think a lot of times our food banks, people don't understand the depth and breadth of them. You think of food in, food out. But really, what's dynamic is, I'm affiliated with Feeding America. So the food banks that I represent in Florida are all Feeding America affiliated food banks. So there's
Hmm.
12 of them. Feeding America, each food bank has a service area. They may take care of multiple counties. Some take care of 11 counties. It just depends on how it was laid out. So we do cover the whole state. So there is a presence, and we work with about 2,400 partner agencies to get food into the community on a routine basis. But many of ours do, summer feeding programs. We have culinary kitchens, so we have the ability to prep food. So there, I think even when I was at Ag, I saw this really potential relationship between schools and charitable feeding because, like, for example, one of the ideas was when we were doing farm to school, I was like, well, why don't you, to my food bank in the area, I said, why don't you bid on the produce contract with the school district? You can help drive down costs because you're a not for profit. You can probably get better deals into the wholesale food options, and that has occurred. And they've been the food distributor or the farm to school distributor down there for the last 10 years. So I think that there's some really, really cool symbiotic, we're all working with the same families, and food is a convener. And so you can take those private sector dollars and marry them with those, institutional dollars and really get more leverage.
That's great. So 5 or 6 years ago, you join, and I knowing something about you, you jump in and you are not afraid to innovate, to make change, and to improve the ecosystem. As you got started, what were some of the first glaring, eye-opening things where you said, you know what, I think there's got to be a better way to do this? What did that look like? What were those things? Talk us through.
Yeah. So what's really cool is, I am a facilitator in my new role. So I'm not really the doer. So my food banks are the ones where the rubber meets the road and the actual. So what I love is just really being with them and helping open doors if they need it. Trying to make sure that we have if you will, with our state regulations, we have the broadest possible flexibility. But some of the things that are really cool that you're seeing incubated, because about 2012, Feeding America said it's just not enough for us to feed people. We must do that. We really have to feed today, but we really have to figure out what that family needs so that we can shorten the line. So you've seen a lot of things spur over the next 10 years to really incubate that. So you're seeing place-based pantries. So I told you about our pantry network. So think about, we, in many instances, the food bank is the aggregator of the food. Um,
Yeah.
well, that family is already struggling on, maybe transportation issues, time issues, etc. So if we can embed the food where they're going to already be, then
Yeah.
we just make their life a little bit easier, and we create slack in capacity. So you're seeing lots and lots of pantries go into schools. And what's really cool is in the high schools, the students are running that pantry. So it's peer to peer, and there's no stigma, or the stigma is taken away.
Yeah.
You're also seeing pantries go into the college campuses. I don't know if you've seen this, but there was these aha moments even before COVID. But you've got students that are there on set scholarships. Housing prices are up, and they really do struggle with eating, in addition to all the other things they have to have. So you're really seeing us partner with college campuses to create a space for that pantry to go on the campus.
Just an added layer of convenience of, hey, the food bank essentially is the aggregator, like you said, and
Yep.
let's figure out ways to make things more convenient for those in need. And let's take a partnership with a school or a university. Is there an example or an institution that you can highlight and just walk us through what that experience would be like, both for a visitor, a student, or a food service operator?
Yeah, so what we do is we work with the school systems, and they're growing day by day. So we'll deal with the superintendent of that district. So Florida has 67 counties. We have 67 school districts. And
Yeah.
so mainly what the school has to come up with is a dedicated space, right, for that. And we really also encourage refrigeration, because we believe that, we're about 35% of my food bank's portfolio is fresh fruits and vegetables. We have a big,
Cool.
robust Farmers Feeding Florida program, where we work with our agriculture community, and we get money from the state legislator, and we recover product. So we're really part of that supply chain.
Wow. That's awesome.
So we definitely want to encourage refrigeration so that there are better options. And then you usually need some dedicated staff right there, although it can be augmented with volunteers for the food bank, to be in that pantry and servicing it. And that doesn't mean that you can't have, pantry hours, so it's not constantly open. So I think those are some of the things to work through. But really, it's
Yeah.
really having an open mind to have that presence on campus for that student and the
So for
families.
yeah, so what advice would you give to like a food service operator or director out there who's probably thinking, you know what, like there's hunger issues in my ecosystem. Doing
Right.
my best to serve food. Maybe I should go out and form a partnership with a food bank. What advice would you give
Absolutely.
to that individual?
So, Feeding America is the largest hunger relief organization, and there are 200 food banks affiliated with Feeding America across the country. There are 27 or 28 states that have state associations like me. So, not every state has a state association. But you can absolutely Google, for the Feeding America food bank in my area, and then I would absolutely go to them and say, hey, I am seeing a need, because this is actually, I don't know if you remember this, Mike, because you've done a lot in this area, but there's also a program that we've historically done, called, Weekend Backpack Program, right? Where certain
Yeah.
children are identified as having need, and that backpack is stuffed with shelf stable food, and it can go with them on the weekend. To me, that is a wonderful program, and a lot of people still love it. It is labor intense. You also don't know, if the child is consuming it, right? Maybe another sibling is taking it. You're not sure what's happening. But I
Right.
think that having that pantry embedded in the school, so that on the weekends the parent can come and also help take the food home to the for the family, is like a better, way better evolution. So I would encourage any food service director, if they're not already partnering closely with their local food bank, to really get in touch with them, because this is just the tip of the iceberg of where help can come in. For example, during COVID, if you'll recall, with all the waivers for congregate feeding, because y'all are really in the
Yeah.
midst of this, they were setting up distribution in the school bus line, right? So kids could come through and pick up multiple lunches for that week and breakfasts. What we would do is partner with them. And so when they were coming up to pick up that lunch or multiple lunches for their children, they could pop the trunk and we would put food in the trunk.
Huh.
So think about that sort of co-collaboration of really meeting the needs, leveraging the two resources.
There's a synergy there, right? And it's a partnership that
Yes.
maybe is harder to create, maybe, or not create, but just think through at first. But then once the light bulb clicks, it's like, hey, we're both trying to impact the same student, the same family, the same individual. Let's bring our resources and our our expertise together and do great things.
Well, and we also are doing that, in hospitals and also clinics as well. So we're
Hospitals.
embedding, pantries, in hospitals, and we're working closely with the medical, Medicaid providers, et cetera, on giving. There's two questions that can be asked that are, to discern if somebody is food insecure. So if you've got a patient that is food insecure and they have chronic conditions, that are exasperated by those, by food insecurity, then you could actually direct them to your pantry on site for them to take food, that then helps them at home.
That's fantastic. That is
Yep,
amazing.
I know. Yeah, food as medicine is a big, big thing on the
Yeah.
horizon, and we've got a lot of support from, a lot of the healthcare providers and hospitals, as well as the federally qualified health clinics. So,
Robin, a slight transition, but I think it amplifies everything that you've laid here as a framework. When let's just go like 15 years ago, when you heard the word food bank, what were the first like words, phrases that popped into your mind?
well, like a big, big storage of just, dry product, really shelf stable.
Yeah, shelf stable.
Um,
Yeah.
yep, yeah,
I
just
mean,
basic stuff. And now you're seeing, what we feel is hunger is a symptom of an under resourced home. So you can put the band aid on the hunger, but there's something else going on underneath. And until we unravel that through partnerships or other programming that we have going on, we're really not going to help truly stabilize that family. And
right.
so probably out of my 12 food banks, 4 to 5 of them have now full culinary kitchens and have culinary programs where they are teaching financial literacy or bringing in partners to teach financial literacy. They are then placing those, students, right? They have partnerships with hotels, Universal, Publix, even other schools. So this could be a place where individuals school service could really try to find their next, employee. And so we're graduating with them with really, really stable soft skills,
Huh.
and really great culinary skills. And we've got pretty close to 100% placement, and we're marking it over time. And there's great retention in these, and the success of this.
That
And
is
we're doing that
phenomenal.
with warehouse training, as well as forklift and CDL driving. And again, have partnerships with Ryder and other, Amazon, et cetera, for where, to place them in, that work environment.
Robin, this is blowing my mind. I mean, so a father of 8 kids, when I hear the word food bank, usually what is associated with it is a food drive. And my
Right.
kids are coming home and they're like, hey, we're having this competition. It's the fourth grade. We're trying to win. We need to, ransack our food storage. And so we send them down there and they just take out like every can of beans that we've piled up over the past while. And to
Right.
me, like that is kind of my experience or my connection to a food bank. But what you're telling me is like it's so much more. You've said things like it's your food banks are 35% fresh produce, and that
Yes.
it's more than just it's more than just storing, that you're finding a need for culinary literacy, financial literacy, job placement. Maybe walk us through, like help us understand like the components inside one of these food banks that would help kind of evolve maybe my initial thinking of what a food bank is.
Well, if you look at the portfolio of our food, we have partnerships with Publix, Costco, Walmart at the national level. And so my think about this in the state of Florida, my food banks collectively are doing 5,000 retail pickups a week,
Oh,
just to rotating those stores and getting product that still has a great shelf life but is aging out and so is donated.
okay.
So that makes up a pretty large part. And then we work obviously in Florida to recover as much product as we have. And as you know, Florida has about 300 commodities that your mother would love you to eat. We have specialty crops, and so we are recovering probably around 40 million pounds of just fresh produce on an annual basis. And then when we have more than we can handle, we're helping our other food banks outside of the state of Florida garner that as well. So to think of it this way, so you would come into the food bank usually not at the main warehouse, right? That's where all the food is. But we have all of these partnerships in the community with people and so you can go in there and we're doing outreach, and it could be around Medicaid, it could be around SNAP, making sure the population we serve is aware of all of the assets that they could avail themselves up to try to help stabilize that family. And once we're there, then we start really working with them on what their needs are, and either through our own capabilities or our partnerships that we have on the ground, we begin to triage that family for success.
Wow.
Um, so and we do nutrition education. So we're not just handing out fresh fruits and vegetables. It goes with a recipe card that is pretty easy to use, so that in case someone is not familiar with that product, or we think about what the basics are that might be in a family's home that we serve, and we really try to meet them where they are in that respect. And we work closely with the Department of Children and Family here in Florida, and so I think it's just bringing all those assets around, and whether you're actually providing it or you're connecting them with the provider.
I mean, what it sounds like is it's a much bigger thing than just a food bank. What I think
Yes,
you said it this way, that hunger is a
a
symptom
symptom.
of some deeper needs, and what you're trying to do is not only solve for the hunger needs short term, but
Right.
also collectively, like let's look at the whole individual and how we can help.
Yep. And one of the things we really pride ourselves on is if so we I will tell you, COVID really amplified a lot, right? There's silver lining in all moments. Um, we really had to get out in the community and do more direct distribution. It wasn't really the way we want, because we like to connect with the families, but because of social distancing, you saw those long lines where food was put in the trunk and they would move on. That though has ramped us up to realize that even though we have our pantry network, which is, like I said, 2,400 strong around the state, churches and boys and girls clubs and all sorts of things. We are now seeing that we're doing mobile distribution, and these are like really beautiful, like mobile markets where someone can shop for milk and protein and fruits and vegetables and shelf stable, because we really believe giving dignity back to that client so that they have a choice in what they're picking, right? Not that somebody's just handing them food. Like, what is it that your family wants to eat? Of course, it's all pretty cleaned up, and there's no truly bad choices, although everybody needs a birthday cake when
And some
their
Lucky
child has
Charms.
a birthday. Yes. Um, so we're seeing a lot more of that um, throughout our entire network, and I think throughout the country is that you're seeing more of these mobile. Some of them are truly mobile, where that's charitable food, and some of them are actually mobile grocery stores because our food banks can aggregate in the wholesale market and really buy food at a better price. And so, say 4 of my food banks have mobile grocery stores now that actually take SNAP, and then we run the Fresh Access Bucks program, which is an incentive program where an individual who is on SNAP can, if they buy $10 on SNAP, they can get another $10 to buy fruits and vegetables. So, and they can
Wow.
do that up to $40. And so we're seeing great success with that.
That's fantastic. That's phenomenal. This is blowing my mind. A food bank is a place that I think I need to stop and spend more time there.
Yeah, we have to get you down to one for sure and visit. And not well. Then the joke in food bank is you see one food bank, you've seen one food bank. So they all really are different based on sort of the population they serve. We definitely have some that in rural parts of our country just are not as resourced as much as others that are in urban environments.
Yeah.
However, I believe that there's a strong commitment. There is a strong commitment on behalf of not only me as a state association and our board, but also Feeding America to start really paying attention to that inequality based on where that food bank's located to make sure we're thinking about that every hungry person matters no matter where they are.
Are you ready for a hard question, Robin?
I'll try. I love them hard. I love them. Throw me one.
Well, I'm super curious as I just think through this. So, obviously in our work in the school K-12 sector, there is a very identifiable line of when a student qualifies for a free or a less
Yep.
expensive meal, right? There's the socioeconomics, there's a form, an application, and like I qualify. Once you graduate out of that K-12 ecosystem, how do I know if I should be going to a food bank or if I'm need to figure this out on my own? Because I do feel like there's probably lots of us that it's like I'm on my own. It's dogged determination, and you know what? I'm in college. I can't really afford anything, and all I can do is eat ramen, and that's the narrative that's been told. Like, oh, in
Right.
college I was, like what is the line of demarcation if there is one, and what are you doing to kind of break down those barriers to showcase the good things that you can do for a community?
Yeah. So I don't know if you've ever heard of the reports called ALICE, and it was done by Rutgers University for several United Ways across the country. And ALICE stands for Asset Limited Income Constraint Employed. So think of that as the working poor, right? So
Okay.
they make too much, if you will, to qualify for SNAP, but they're still struggling, right?
Yeah.
And in Florida, in the Alice report, it actually went by county and showed sort of the average income for a family of two people working, and then rent and all these other things, and showed that they really were still missing like $300 a month to make ends meet,
Yeah.
just with a bare bones life.
Yeah.
And I think that is very, very eye opening for people, right? So food banks, for the most part, are not tending to that SNAP recipient. We may pick them up a little bit at the end of the month if their benefit runs out. But for the most part, we are dealing with that person who is really struggling to make their own ends meet and need just a little bit of help, because
Yeah.
if we can give food, then it frees up some of their resources to maybe buy books or to do something else with what they need. And for the most part, our portfolio of food, right, is donated, and is given, so we
Mhm.
don't have to have any eligibility criteria around it. Now, there is a program called Temporary Emergency Food Program, and it's a commodity program that also is food within our portfolio. And because of that being a federal program, there is a sheet that you have to fill out if you're being given that type of food, but it is self declared. So there's no, you just self declare that you're in a
Verification.
financial challenge.
Okay.
So I would just encourage anybody to again, I really believe college campuses are becoming very, very aware of this issue, and are embedding a lot of things on their campuses. So I would really deal with this, the student government and that kind of thing to find out what is available on that campus, and also maybe get one going if you're a struggling student, and you want to make a difference for others that might be in your area. I would really encourage them to bring that to the leadership of the university.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Let's just for my mental math here, let's suppose there's 100,000 individuals that would kind of fit this demographic to be served. Like, what percentage of those do you feel like you're today reaching out and helping, and how many are kind of left out that you would love to meet and help?
That's a really good question, Mike. And you know me and data, I'm trying to get at it in a really robust way. We just commissioned a body of work that was released in March of 2020 called the Meal Deficit Metric. And it is attempting to look at hunger by missing meals.
Yeah.
Not like, because when somebody says there's food insecurity at 10%, well, how many meals is that? Like what kind of resources do I have to put in there? And it's not as granular. And most of the data to date is at census tract level or county level. Our model goes down to the block group level. So blocks make up block groups and block groups make up census tracts.
Hmm.
So we are really trying to really understand where that need is, looking at food from all sources, um, even like a family, giving food. And so it's a hard one to note that whether or not we're hitting everybody with one meal or two meals, or some families were maybe giving them all their meals and somebody else were only given one. That's a very good question, Mike, and I'm not sure that I have the exact answer, but I know we continue to drill down and also make sure, for example, with through Feeding America, some of my food banks have done sort of innovative practices, pilots with texting, to see if we can break down that stigma. So you can text if you need food, and then the food is distributed at a non-typical food environment, so that it's not embarrassing or whatever. And through some of those pilots, we actually have picked up people that probably had never sought help, but it made it more user friendly and not as embarrassing, if you will.
Wow. I have some questions about that. That's fantastic. So what you're saying is possibly into the future, you could see models where there is actual delivery or maybe like pre-order kind of grab and go pickup, but just like ease
Yes.
the experience. Have you done anything like that to date?
Yeah, so during COVID, again, never let a good crisis go to waste. A lot of things had to get tested out, because there was people were homebound, didn't have transportation, couldn't get on buses, right? So partnering with Amazon and some of our own smaller vehicles, we started distributing right into homes, and especially seniors. We worked closely with the Department of Elder Affairs to ensure that those seniors who can no longer do a congregate eating were being fed. So yeah, I think, and some of that is not going to go back in the box. It's
Yeah.
out. Is going to get refined. I mean, you've got some testing going on in South Florida with my food bank down there, Paco, and Feeding South Florida, where they're doing medically tailored meals um, for healthcare clients, and it's
Wow.
being distributed to the client's house.
Yeah.
So I
How cool
definitely
is that?
think that, and you're also going to start seeing, I think, value add, right? So if you want families to have healthier food and those types of things, and you're going to see us starting to cut and dice it, bag it, so that it's more user friendly to where they
Yeah.
can engage with that product.
How great is that? It was just a few weeks ago. We had Agnes Sherman. She is amazing. She, runs a big team at the University of Wisconsin up in, yeah, Wisconsin. And she first introduced this idea of, hunger issues amongst college students. And, it was probably the first time I had heard about it. It made total sense in K 12, student childhood hunger is just such an issue, and being able to educate a young child, it includes making sure they're well nourished, and then they graduate from high school and it's almost kind of like they're on their own, and so these issues are there. I'm really big, I want to get back to this issue because I think there's a lot of operators that are listening to this show today, and probably are thinking, whew, this hits home. There's something there. Maybe I need to explore it. And so I had asked the question, but let's just jump back into this. If you're a food service director, what are some immediate things that I could take away and do today to maybe start to partner with a pantry or a food bank and build that partnership? What would you say is the order of operation there?
Yeah, I would probably reach out to, again, the Feeding America affiliated food bank. And I only say that is because they're really well sourced, if you will, from the national level. They have high accountability, the highest standards of food safety, audits, and et cetera, because you want to make sure that around food you are really focused on that. And I know that food service is very keen on that. So you'd want to make sure you partner with somebody who is like mind. The two things I think could be partners is, I don't know if you remember when the new meal pattern came through, there was a lot of food that children had to take but didn't want to eat. And so we started creating share tables, partnering with that local food bank to also maybe donate that food that comes off the share table, goes back into the refrigeration, but can't come back out in the school lunch program would be a start. And then meeting with them to say, hey, what are some of the things that you have in your toolbox? Because there may be even additional innovations coming up that really can help my student population and their parents that we serve. It could be a mobile market once a week on campus if the school doesn't have, bricks and mortar space that it can make available for a pantry. So think of it this way, Mike. When someone is stressed and already juggling, whatever our intervention is with that family, it has to be consistent and reliable. And so no matter what you do, if you can't do it day in and day out, right? Maybe a mobile distribution once a week on the campus, or every other Tuesday, as long as it's consistent and that family knows that that's going to be a reliable asset, you begin to settle them down, if you will, so they can get to some of the other issues they're facing.
Yeah. That is phenomenal. This feels like a topic that needs to be explored again and again and again. We all need to do our part, do better here. And to that, I'd probably say, if you are out there listening and you've got a food pantry, a food bank partnership that is successful, please reach out to us. Let us know what's going on. A topic worth discussing. Robin Safley, you are just a breath of fresh air. Thank you for joining us today as we kind of close down. The question that I've been dying to ask you is, what do you see, if you had a magic wand, what obstacles, what would you use that magic wand to accomplish in the next year?
Well, that's a great question. So let me stay in the food environment for a second. I think what we haven't really ever done a great job of is, so when I look at the food environment, I look at the retail, I look at institutional feeding, and I look at charitable. And I don't know that we've ever really comprehensively identified whether all those are working together well. If I had a podium that people would listen to me from, I would get to some of the smaller um, markets, if you will, like a Dollar General, those types of things, who have just exploded with footprint in rural Florida and rural America, and say, how can we partner with you to get even more fresh offerings in that infrastructure? I would then also probably advocate, or I wouldn't probably advocate, I'd advocate for universal school meals, to tell you the truth. We saw great success with our community eligibility, which was a new regulation that popped out of the 2010,
Mm-hmm.
where, if you met certain criteria, all kids could eat free, and you got a little kicker on the reimbursement. um, I would absolutely go ahead and say that worked. It saved a lot of money in the long run because of paper applications and trying to figure out which child is which. I would just go ahead and make that law, and then I would really hopefully if those two things are really going well, then you put charitable feeding back where it needs to be, which is acute feeding, whereas we've really become chronic tools. Um, so I don't think you'll ever get out of people in need, right? People come in and out of life's struggles.
Right.
But if you could mitigate how long they stay there is what I would want to do.
That's fantastic. Well, Robin, is there anything we didn't talk about today?
No, I just think there's a great relationship here because we advocate right alongside school for the very rules and regulations that support them. So we're very big advocacy partners as well, in
Yeah.
addition to being program partners.
One of my takeaways, I just love how you kind of phrase that. We at Nutrislice just historically have always thought there's retail food service, there's non-commercial or institutional food service. And I think today you just opened up a whole different direction, that there's also charitable food service, and it needs a
Mhm.
seat at the table, and there should be partnerships. It should be, collaboration, because we're all different, maybe objectives, right? But I think everyone's interested in curbing childhood hunger, or those in need, those passing through tough times. Like, we want to be there to help, and the expertise around food service really does sit there with retail and institutional. So those partnerships and collaborations could be a really, really great thing. So
I
thank you for
agree. I
that.
couldn't. Yeah, collapsing all the silos would be a wonderful thing, wouldn't it?
Well, and then, on top of that, just the culinary literacy, the financial literacy, the employment, and just the resource, the hub that a food bank can provide, I think is fascinating, is definitely worth another episode. You have to promise that you'll come back in a
Oh,
yeah,
absolutely.
we can talk this.
And you and I have talked about this before, Mike. I mean, hunger, yes, is a symptom of under resourced house, but hunger exasperates and limits a child's ability to learn, a family's ability to negotiate and navigate either higher learning or any of the troubles that they're facing. It's been shown to exasperate if you have mental issues, right? If you're on medications and you're not eating right, it's going to exasperate all of those issues. So I do believe it's this core fundamental center to unraveling all the other things that a family might face.
Yeah, that is fantastic. Well, keep doing everything that you're doing. Go faster, go bigger, keep doing awesome things, Robin. Robin Safley, Feeding American Florida, 67 counties, 12 members, food banks, 2,400 agency partners. Let's see, 5,000 retail pickups a week, 40 million pounds of produce. Phenomenal work. Keep it up. We have your contact information. Is it okay if we share it in the show notes? If any one of our listeners
Oh,
wants to reach out
absolutely.
and learn more, we're hoping that for our listenership, please take this to heart. There's got to be something that you can do. You can do some good. And in the social marketing, the world of today, with these new generations of kids, this story, if you're retail or institutional and you're trying to drive the bottom line, you will be surprised at just how good of a branding, and just I would say a customer experience, a student experience, and just their appreciation for you and your brand, if you are involved in these types of activities. So please do something today. Robin, again, thank you very much. It has been an absolute delight to have you. Can't wait to have you back on.
All right. Thanks, Mike.
Take care, everybody.